have a candidate for governor of Kansas, and the moderator who will ask the questions is Elnora Jefferson, who is with the Historic Northeast Association. Elnora?
Thank you, Merle. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mrs. Wynn, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
First of all, we'll have opening remarks from Mrs. Wynn, and you will have 3 minutes for the opening remarks. Then we'll have 3 to 4 questions, and the first question will be for 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes to answer. And every question thereafter would be about 1.5 minutes. Our timekeeper, Bridget, will keep us both honest and on time. And then at the end of the session, you'll have an opportunity for closing remarks, and you'll have 2 minutes.
All right.
All right, so the floor is yours, please.
Okay. Well, I am Jennifer Wynn. I am 44 years old. I'm married. I have 4 children. They are all stair steps, so they're currently 22, 23, 24, and 25. Yes, I was busy for a few years. And I'm also a small business owner. I have come from a pretty hard background, I would say. I never had anything handed to me. I had to work very hard. I'm going to just break it out in the open right now for you because I'm very transparent and I'm very honest. I had moments of childhood that wasn't pleasant. I had divorced parents where I went back and forth. I have filed bankruptcy in 2003 after my divorce. I was court-ordered child support, however, I never received that. So after some of the big blows that I've substantiated, I chose to get up and fight rather than waller. My grandmother used to always say, don't waller in it. And I didn't. I got back up on my feet. I fought. I started digging trenches and installing irrigation systems on my own. Today, after I started 12 and a half years ago, I have a $2.5 million a year company. I've been very successful in obtaining 4 states for contracting on commercial properties. I do facility management both inside and out. I'm very educated on how to read a P&L, which is a profit and loss statement, and a balance sheet. And I also very clearly identify you cannot spend what you don't have. It doesn't work that way. I'm pretty much to the point of I've had enough. That's where I'm at. I've had enough. Our forefathers never intended for career politicians, folks. That's not what they intended. They intended for the people of the state, the people of our country, to stand up and serve. And what I had to learn was that we don't just serve our country by joining the armed forces. We need to start serving our country by running for these positions, stop the career politicians, stop the corporate-owned agendas, the special interest group agendas, and actually be a voice of the people. I am none of those that I've listed. I have received no funding from any of those entities. What we have received are simply donations from common working folks just like myself.
Thank you very much. Here's the first question. Local units of government, including the unified government officials, complain about state unmandated mandates. The most recent example is the state law that phases out the mortgage registration tax, causing local officials in Wyandotte County to increase their respective mill levies, as in Johnson County and perhaps others. Doesn't it make more sense to let local government officials control their own fiscal future rather than using state directives? Please answer why or why not.
I do believe that it's more, I think the big government needs to be reduced, and I think we do need to bring certain issues within our own boundaries. You know, it's kind of like somebody taking my children and saying they can raise my children as well as I do somewhere else, but really I would do it best because I know my children. So for me, no different than education, I think we need to get back down to the people operating its own environment, and to me that's very important. So I would say yes, I would agree that we need to get away from the state mandates and we need to come down to the local counties who obviously know what's going on. But even further than that, I would like to see more communication. So when I say that the counties should be responsible for their own counties and make the decisions accordingly, I would expect that those counties would be communicating in a viable way with the taxpayers. Because inevitably, guys, we're the ones that are getting hit. And the middle class and the lower class, they're the ones that are paying the price. So for me, not only is an issue of bringing it back to the counties, but then it's an issue of creating revenue. And that's something we're going to talk about at least in my closing statement.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Here's the second question. Tax collections for the past several months have been down in Kansas. Moody's Investors Service recently downgraded the state's debt rating, citing cuts in income tax as the reason. Does this action mean that Kansas needs to return to a tax policy that has a balance among property, income, and sales tax? Please answer why or why not.
Absolutely not. We do not need to go back up. The cuts are great. What did not happen was we did not replenish those funds. So basically we set up a tax system for LLC, sole proprietors, S corps. It exempted C corps, which is what I am. But it basically reduced the income, but didn't replace it. And we can't do that. Can we keep the cuts that we have been given as small business owners? We can. But we in turn have to create a revenue that replaces it. You can't go home tomorrow and reduce your household budget or your paycheck by $1,000 a month and think you're still going to pay the same amount of bills. You cannot do that. So we have to create a revenue to replace the benefits of tax cuts that the current administration has issued.
Okay, all right. Follow up on that question. Do you have any examples or can cite an example?
I have lots of examples. First and foremost, I will tell you the biggest interest that I have in creating revenue. I mean, it's like me in business. When we are down below our budget and we know that we're falling short, what do? We go out and sell jobs. That's what we do. I mean, if we're not meeting our guidelines for whatever reason, for whatever variable, we have to replace that income. We have people's paychecks that depend on it. The same applies to our state. We have reduced the income to our state by giving tax credits that were not adjusted or basically made up for. Industrial hemp, guys, that is an untapped revenue. That is a separate issue from marijuana. That is a plant that was attached to the prohibition that should have never been done. We are currently giving these people in China $17 billion every year. Those jobs can be right here in Kansas, and we're talking tens of thousands of them. That is something that we need to implement and implement very quickly in our state. That would allow us not only to afford our children the education they deserve, but that would also afford us to keep the tax benefit that current small businesses are getting because we would have the revenue to replace it.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Here's question number 3. The KanCare program has moved the Kansas Medicaid program into the private sector, with 3 huge private national companies handling reimbursements. There have been complaints, however, from desperately ill patients, 2 major hospitals who have fallen through the cracks, citing slow reimbursements. Here in Wyandotte County, health officials report limited benefits from KanCare. But say that expanded Medicaid would have helped much more. This is what they say. What is your assessment of KanCare's record so far in serving the most needy patients?
I've talked with several people with the KanCare issue. I was not very pleased to learn that an appointment of a particular person was made to go in and audit KanCare and find the discrepancies and the errors in which is affecting our citizens. So again, it comes back to leadership and putting the right people in place, and I'm going to be very blunt, getting away from the buddy system. I want transparency. I want to see everything. As a taxpayer, I feel I'm owed that. I feel I deserve that, and so does everybody else. So it comes down to finding the right person to put in place to find those discrepancies, and again, transparency will find every single area that we have not been privileged to know what's being wasted and where, so that we can reapply those funds to projects like KanCare and Medicaid that I am for. I am for expanding those. People need those. Right now, 5,000 vets are out of health care. because we did not expand that program. So for me, I am in agreement. I think that we need to, and I think that we need to put somebody in charge that's transparent, and I want those answers, because obviously I don't get privileged information from those records, but putting someone in place that can identify the problems and correct them, and use that money to benefit the people, not someone else's pocket.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Well, we have an opportunity for a fourth question. The Kansas Public Employees Retirement System recently reported that its unfunded liability has dropped to just less than $10 billion, which is an improvement. A stronger investment market and increased employee contributions have helped the system. But what else needs to be done to improve this very important fund balance?
It comes back to the same answer, and I don't mean to be redundant, but I'm telling you. Things like medicinal marijuana that help people, that's a fact. We know that it helps children with epilepsy. We've seen it. We've got the studies to prove it. We now know that it's even going as far as helping those with Alzheimer's disease. We need the revenue off of the medication that people are leaving our state for. We need the revenue off of industrial hemp that can actually create jobs that replace concrete manufacturing, which, by the way, damages our ozone greatly. We can make clothing, we can make all of these things, but most importantly, while we're creating tens of thousands of jobs, not only for our farmers, which go to a 200 to 300 net profit per acre, we're talking about a revenue that's probably, we're estimating, around $300 million a year. Do you know what we could do with $300 million a year? We could fix a lot of the problems. But then again, even before that's done, transparency is the biggest issue. If we don't find out, if we the people don't know what's going on behind closed doors, we had 74% of lobbyists basically paying our legislators that is unaccounted for, guys. That's not acceptable to me. I will expose them, and I will show you that we do have more money than what we think we do. And it's called wasteful spending. And if we correct that, we tap the revenues that are there. There is no reason why even 2 years from now, our state can't be a great state and 100% better than where we are today.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, here's another question.
Number 5.
Kansas has the Rural Opportunity Zone for counties who have lost 10% or more of their population. This provides state income tax rebates and up to $3,000 a year on student loans for people moving to these areas. Would you favor an urban opportunity zone with similar benefits for those moving to an urban area that has lost population? Why or why not?
You know, I hadn't really thought about that before, so I'm very honest in my answers. I hadn't really thought about that before, but am I opposed to something like that? Absolutely not. I would like to see us stop giving corporate welfare, is what I call it, to corporations that can afford to pay the taxes, and instead of putting the burden on the middle class or, you know, the less fortunate. So for me, if that were a proposal in front of me, would I accept that? Yes, because I would indeed stop companies like Cargill that are getting all the tax benefits, and I would shift those to move people into our urban areas and to give them assistance to go to college and better their life.
Okay, all right, thank you. And now, Bridget, do we have an opportunity for a sixth and last question? Okay, all right, very good. Here you are, done very well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The state of Missouri has passed legislation that aims at stopping the border war when it comes to economic development. Often, incentives provided private companies mean that individual and small business taxpayers must make up the difference because of loss of revenue, and there is little, if any, real economic gain, particularly if employees simply cross the state line to a new location. Would you, as governor, favor similar legislation to the Missouri law? Why or why not?
That's a long question. Okay. As far as crossing the border, first off, let me say this. I am opposed to who you know is based on how much tax incentives you'll get. I'm really tired of that. You know, as a small business, I've never received any tax incentives for anything, not anything. And I'm sitting here looking at this going, I started out providing 2 jobs, now I'm providing 43 jobs, and what do I get? I don't get anything. I pay my taxes, and that's that. And I would like to see a fair playing field. I would like that to be national. If I could just wave a wand and be president, I would like to make that a national playing field, because, you know, we shouldn't go to one state or another predicated on how much we can profit in our pockets. We should be having a fair playing field, and that comes down to the pay-to-play legislation. I want pay-to-play. I don't think you should be voting on bills or laws if it mandates a profit in your pocket. I think you should be exempt from even being able to vote on that. But I would say that I would not change the way that Missouri does anything other than encourage them to follow us, because I think we're going to be the new innovative state. Is my opinion. And I think that when we end the corporate welfare, I think others will follow.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Mrs. Wind. You're welcome. Well, at this moment, then, you've successfully answered all questions. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And now it's time for closing remarks.
Okay. I would encourage you to look me up. You know, we've all said that something has got to change. I think we all agree that it's completely out of control. And the one thing that I learned from my grandmother growing up, and she was a we called her a little stick of dynamite because she was about 4'10". She did everything. She taught me to garden. She taught me to work hard. She is the one who basically helped raise me while my father worked and went to school. And she always told me, Jennifer, if you're going to do something, first off, do it right, or don't bother to do it all. So, folks, I've been driving all over this state, meeting people, and most importantly, listening, because that's something that our current government doesn't do. I was always told that if you do the same thing you've always done, you will get the same thing you've always got. So I would encourage you to look at me. I'm not a politician. I'm not a millionaire. I make it from paycheck to paycheck. Have I had struggles in the past? I have. Have I overcome them? I have. And I am now a successful small business owner that I pay my bills and I take a decent paycheck home. But if we don't stop hiring the same corporate-owned politicians, we're not going to change anything. So I would encourage you to look me up. We don't have millions. All we have donated are from the people who actually support us. We turn down special interest money. We turn down corporate money because we don't want that. We want to be funded for the people because we want to represent the people. And I say we because I am you. I am of the people. I know what it's like in this world, and I don't live in a falsehood. Reality for me means that we get up every day and we struggle, and I think that we can stop that by ending things like prohibition on a plant that's costing us $132 million every year to incarcerate nonviolent victimless crimes. That's a lot of people. So I would encourage you to look us up, because if you want change, then we've got to do something different.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mrs. Wind, and thank you very much for coming.